This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good afternoon to all of you. Makes me very happy to see so many people again over here. Till now, Baruch Hashem, the Yarchei has been very successful. We're going to have now a great afternoon program. Tonight we're going to talk about Chesed. Somebody in town, and that's not in the program, but I'm telling you already now, somebody in town has promised me that we're going to have tonight, in between Rabbi Glatstein and Rabbi Golker. Somebody promised me an incredible story about Chesed. So please come tonight and don't miss that. And for all of you, is it clear? Okay. For all of you, in case you are afraid that you'll forget whatever Rabbi Glatstein told you, you don't have to be afraid, because this morning when I woke up, my wife told me I'm already listening to yesterday's Shiur on Torah Anytime. Is hij aan? Hij is absoluut aan. Okay. So we're going to hear Rabbi Glatstein now live, and tomorrow morning by 6 o'clock you can all hear it again, and to relive this incredible Yarchei Kallah. And now, without any further ado, please Rabbi Glatstein give us an incredible Shiur about Yaakov Avinu.
Okay, Rav, this is you could give out a handout. I don't know. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Could you hear me? I don't like a stand. It makes me very stiff. I like to hold it, okay? Good afternoon. I am very energized this afternoon. I'm very excited. First, I see so many of my dear friends, so it makes me very excited to share with you an approach about the passing of Bechir Sheba Avos Yaakov Avinu. And I have special regards for you. First, we just visited The Hague, and we visited Reb Shaul of Hague, a great tzaddik. He was the Rav there for over 30 years. He fasted every Monday and Thursday for 55 years. He's right here in The Hague. And then we visited Menashe ben Israel and Rav Yaakov Sasportas. They send their best regards. Menashe ben Israel was a descendant of Abar ben El. Yaakov Sasportas was a descendant of the Ramban. I want to thank my very dear friend, Reb Nassan Weldler, for coming along with us. And if you want to review any of the Shiurim, courtesy of Reb Nassan, they're available very soon after the Shiur. Vayechi Yaakov v'Eretz Mitzrayim Sheva Esrei Shana. Yaakov Avinu lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. Chazal say these 17 years he finally lived in peace and tranquility. He was finished with his tsaros. He was finished with the tzara of Esav, Lavan, Rachel, Dinah, Binyamin. Finally a life of tranquility. 17 years Yaakov Avinu lives in Egypt, b'menucha. Actually, amazingly, the Rishonim teach us that the reason why Yaakov lived 17 years in Egypt in peace and harmony was midah k'neged midah, quid pro quo, measure for measure. And that is because Rabbeinu Bechaye teaches us, Tosfos teaches us, the Baal HaTurim teaches us that there was a special chesed that Yaakov Avinu did. You know what the chesed was? He supported a child who had no other means of support. Say, what? Who's that? Yeah. He supported his son Yosef. He supported his son. Who wouldn't support their son? Yeah, but if you support your child, not because it's a duty, not because it's an obligation, not because you feel, out of a feeling of chesed, Hashem repaid Yaakov Avinu. Then the merit of supporting his child for 17 years, he was zoicha to live in tranquility, and Yosef supported him for 17 years, which is a very great limud. Because we always take it for granted. Of course, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to support my children. I'm going to feed them. I'm going to put them to bed. Yeah, but we often forget to think that we're doing them a chesed. It's a chesed. They would have nowhere else to go. They would have no other food to eat. They would have nowhere else to live. So if you help your children as a chesed, it's treated as a chesed. In the merit of the 17 years, can we close the door? Because, you see, my kids cry at home. I came here not to have to hear. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Anyway, so if anybody wants to go to Cedarhurst and watch my children, that's available. Anyone? Okay. No, I still hear them. Now, okay. So come the Rishonim and they say, Vayechi Yaakov, in the merit of the 17 years that Yaakov Avinu supported Yosef, he merited 17 years to live in peace and harmony in the land of Egypt. The numerical value of the word Vayechi is 34. Vayechi Yaakov. In the merit of the 17 years he supports Yosef, he merited 17 years in the land of Egypt. But the Medrash draws another very interesting analogy. The Medrash says, Yaakov lived 17 years of peace in Mitzrayim, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Judah the prince, lived in tranquility in Sipori in the end of his life for 17 years. What's the connection between Yaakov Avinu and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? We find another commonality between Yaakov Avinu and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Tainis, Rav Nachman and Rabbi Yitzchak were eating a meal together. So Rav Nachman says to Rabbi Yitzchak, "Nu, tell me some of the beautiful things that you heard from your Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan." So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, "Let me tell you, Rabbi Yitzchak, something really nice Rabbi Yochanan told me." He said, "You're not supposed to talk at a meal." That's what he taught me. So stop asking me questions. My Rebbe taught me, you don't talk at a meal. Shema yakdim kana leveshet. Maybe while the food is going down, it will go down the wrong pipe. The Gemara says, when the meal was over, Rabbi Yitzchak said, Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Yaakov Avinu loy meis. Yaakov never died. So Rabbi Yitzchak said, I have a very simple question. Really, Yaakov never died? So why did they eulogize him? Why did they mourn for him? Why did they bury him? Get him out! Quick, take him out if he didn't die. V'chi b'chdi, saftu saftanaya, v'chantu chantanaya. They embalmed him, they mummified him. Take off the tissues if he didn't die. So Rav Nachman said, what that means is, there's a drasha. It compares Yaakov Avinu to his children. Just like the Jewish people never died, will never die, just like Am Yisrael Chai, Yaakov Avinu never died. And that's what we're going to examine today. What does it mean that Yaakov Avinu never died? What does this mean that Yaakov Avinu never died? Did you ever hear the expression, Titain emes liYaakov? We know every one of the avos has a different midah. Titain emes liYaakov, chesed liAvram. Yaakov Avinu is specifically connected to the midah of emes. Actually, if you take the letters emes liYaakov, look at those letters, emes liYaakov, they could be unscrambled. Yaakov loy meis. Emes li aleph mem taf lamed could be unscrambled loy meis. What we're learning is the reason Yaakov Avinu never died is he's specifically associated with the attribute of truth. One who is always truthful is not subject to the decomposition of this world. Yaakov Avinu loy meis. Now there's a connection between Yaakov Avinu and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. What's the connection? Rabbi was a spark of the soul of Yaakov Avinu. He's called Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Nasi stands for Nitzutz Shel Yaakov Avinu, a spark of Yaakov Avinu. Rabbi always emphasized the midah of Tiferes, like in Pirkei Avos. Rabbi Omer, Eizehi Tiferes, Eizehi midah sheyidbak ha'adam, kol shehi Tiferes la'oiseha, v'tiferes loy min ha'adam. Rebbe emphasized Tiferes. Why does Rebbe emphasize Tiferes? Because the midah of Yaakov Avinu was Tiferes. Abraham is Chesed. Yitzchak is Gevura. Yaakov Avinu is Tiferes. Rebbe was a spark of Yaakov Avinu. And therefore, just like Yaakov Avinu spends 17 years in peace and tranquility in the land of Egypt at the end of his life, Rebbe too has 17 years of tranquility and Sipori in the end of his life. Yaakov Avinu loimes. But what does that mean, Yaakov Avinu loimes? We have so many psukim that talk about the patira, the death of Yaakov Avinu. How do we understand this concept that Yaakov Avinu loimes? So let's share the following thought. You know, we say Yaakov Avinu loimes, but Yaakov had two names. Does anybody know what was Yaakov Avinu's other name? Yisrael. Yisrael was his other name. Did you know that every time it talks about Misa in the context of Yaakov Avinu, it never says Yaakov died. It says Vayikrevu Yimei Yisrael Lamos Vayechi Yaakov. Yaakov lived, but Vayikrevu Yimei Yisrael Lamos. The days of Israel approached dying. Whenever it talks about death, it always uses the name Yisrael. Whenever it talks about life, it uses the name Yaakov. So what does this mean? What does it mean that Yaakov had another name? Why did he have another name? What does another name signify? Says the Al-Shech HaKadosh, the meaning is that Yaakov's soul had two dimensions. He starts off on the level of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov is, so to speak, a lower level. But after he overcomes the angel of Esav, he is given a new dimension of soul. That's the dimension of Yisrael. That dimension was a gift given to Yaakov Avinu. At the end of Yaakov Avinu's life, this special dimension, Yisrael, departs from Yaakov Avinu. It leaves him. So, Vayechi Yaakov, the madrega of Yaakov never stopped, it never ceased. Now, it doesn't mean Yaakov Avinu is walking around. You're not going to walk down the streets of Amsterdam and bump into Yaakov Avinu. It means he's temporarily in repose. It means his soul is still with him. Like when a person sleeps, they're still alive, they're just not active. Yaakov Avinu loimes means the dimension of Yaakov Avinu continues to function. It's the added dimension of Yisrael that has departed from Yaakov Avinu. We know that when Yaakov Avinu heard the bad news about Yosef HaTzadik, so it says that he lost his Ruach HaKodesh. He lost his heavenly spirit. And now I would like to share with you the incredible revelation of Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem. Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem was one of the earliest tzaddikim who is known as a Baal Shem. Baal Shem is somebody who is a master of various Kabbalistic names of God and could effectuate miracles. Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem, not to be confused with the Baal Shem Tov, he's much earlier. He's one of the earliest Mikubalim. He's buried in Varmaiza in Worms, near Chavos Yair, near all the other Gedolim buried in Varmaiza. The Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem uncovers a great secret, a great treasure. Why is it that the dimension of Yaakov Avinu never departed, only the dimension of Yisrael left him? He says very simple. You can only die once. When Yaakov Avinu heard the news that Yosef was torn apart, Yaakov Avinu was beside himself. He said, Vayomer Alehem Yaakov Avihem, Oisi shikaltem, Yosef einenu, V'Shimon einenu, V'es Binyamin tikachu, Olai hayo kalana. I've been so overburdened with tragedy. Yaakov Avinu's madrega of Yaakov left him. In a sense, Yaakov died when he heard the news of Yosef. But later on in this week's Parsha, Vayalu mi Mitzrayim, Vayavoyu Eretz Canaan, Vayagidu loy loimer, Oid Yosef b'ni chai. Vayaris ho'agolois, Yaakov saw the wagons. Vatichi ruach Yaakov aviem, Yaakov came back to life. Oh, Yaakov came back to life. So he ain't going anywhere. Because he already experienced death. He already died. He already died. You only have to die once. Yisrael died. The Madrega of Yisrael left, says Rabbi Yoel Shem. That was an added Madrega that always remained with him. So upon his demise, Yisrael left. But the Madrega of Yaakov had left when he heard the news about Yosef. When he heard Yosef was still alive, V'atechi ruach Yaakov. And yet, therefore Yaakov Avinu loimes. So everything I just said was by way of introduction. Because every rabbi likes to say a few words before he begins to speak. What does Yaakov Avinu do in his final words? When I was in 3rd grade, we were charged with a very important mission. To memorize 28 psukim in Parshas Vayechi, which they called the Birchas Yaakov. You ever hear the Birchas Yaakov? I gave it out. You should have it on your sheets. If you want to keep the sheets as a souvenir of Yarchei Kallah, Amsterdam, 5784, it's all yours. No extra charge. We have 28 psukim in Parshas Vayechi. They are known as the Birchas Yaakov. And we take it for granted, Yaakov Avinu in his dying breath, he's somehow blessing his children. By the way, it's very interesting. In Hilchas Birchas Hamazon, I remember the Shulchan Aruch creates a whole convoluted case. And the question is, who is Mavarech? Who is Mazamein? If you have a whole bunch of people sitting around the table, who gets to bench? And the Shulchan Aruch says the case is, there's Avraham, there's Yitzchak, there's Yaakov, there's Yosef, there's Moshe. And the Shulchan Aruch says, and this way everyone will get Birchas Yaakov. Meaning the Mechaber conjured up a case so that the guy doing the benching is Yaakov. Because he apparently wanted to call it the Birchas Yaakov. And that's what we're used to. We're used to terming the episode of the end of the life of Yaakov Avinu, we call it Birchas Yaakov. But if you study it and you analyze it, it's a little bit unusual. Why do we call it the Birchas Yaakov? Were these really brachos? I mean, tell me what you think. Ruvain, Pachaz Kamayim Al Toisar, you're impetuous. Ki Alisa Mishkavei Avicha, you meddled in my bed, in my personal matters. You defiled my couch. Wow, what a beautiful blessing. So heartwarming. Yaakov Avinu is criticizing Ruvain. And then what about Shimon? Shimon v'Levi Achim, Klei Chamas Mecheroseim. You're terrorists. Wow, it's so beautiful. These are the blessings. Or Apam, cursed is your anger. Ve'evrasam ki kashasa, your wrath is difficult. I'm going to disperse you. I'm going to scatter you. Wow, these are such nice blessings at the end of the life of Yaakov Avinu. Are these blessings? Zavulon, you're going to live by the seacoast. I mean, is that a blessing? Is that real estate advice? Is that a statement of fact? Yisachar, chamor gorem, Yisachar, you're a bony donkey. Again, very beautiful blessings over here. Dan, you're a snake on the road. And then Yaakov throws in the words, Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. What's going on there? He's saying, Kriya Shema L'Amita, Lishuascha kivisi, what is this, Kiddush Levana? What's Lishuascha kivisi Hashem? What is this all about? If you study the comments that Yaakov Avinu makes to his sons at the end of his life, we have basically one of four choices to try to determine what is Yaakov Avinu doing here at the end of his life. What is he trying to tell his children? One choice is he's giving them a bracha. But as we mentioned, could he possibly be giving them a bracha? He doesn't seem to be blessing Ruvain, not Shimon, not Levi, not Yisachar, not Dan. Well, maybe he's giving them rebuke. You know, like Moshe Rabbeinu, before he died, Rashi says he gave them rebuke, because if you give your children too much rebuke when they're alive, maybe they'll run away. They'll be too embarrassed to look at you. So maybe Yaakov Avinu is giving rebuke. Well, he doesn't seem to be giving rebuke to Yehuda. He tells Yehuda, Gur Aryeh Yehuda, you're like a young lion cub. Lo Yasor Shevim Yehuda, the staff of rulership will never be removed from you. So he doesn't seem to be rebuking Yehuda. Maybe it's prophecy about the future. Like he tells Zevulun, you're going to live by the seacoast. Or he tells Dan, you're like a snake who will ambush the enemy. But that doesn't seem to be consistent. He's not telling Reuven anything about the future. He doesn't tell Shimon anything about the future. So here we have a very important Parsha in the Torah. We take it for granted that it's called the Birchas Yaakov. We teach children, memorize these psukim, memorize the blessings, and if you actually look at the psukim, they are not blessings at all. So what in the world is Yaakov Avinu doing at the end of his life? Can anyone come up with one thematic approach, one nosei, one theme to explain thematically what is Yaakov Avinu doing at the end of his life? There's only one commentary who has been able to pave a path and explain this segment of the Torah as one thematic approach, and that is Rav Don Yitzchak Abarbanel. The Abarbanel, who the Beis Yosef calls Hanesher Hagadol, the great eagle. The Abarbanel lived from 1438 to 1508. He passed away in 1508. He passes away in Italy. If you want to join us, we're going to be going President's Day in February to Italy to visit the grave of the Abarbanel. He passes away in the year 1508. That year was dubbed the year Chasar, missing. The year Chasar, Ches Samach Reish, is 268. 268 in the Jewish calendar is 1508, and the reason why they called it Chasar is because they were missing the Abarbanel. And as we know, the Abarbanel was the finance minister of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And when Ferdinand and Isabella married and they unified their kingdom after completing the mission of Reconquesta, reconquering the entire Iberian Peninsula, and they were going to banish any Jew who would not accept forcible conversion, the Abarbanel was given special license to remain in Spain as the finance minister of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And the Abarbanel did not take up the offer. Instead, he led his fellow brethren out of Spain as they were Mekadesh Shem Shamayim on Thursday, August 2nd, 1492, on Tisha B'Av. And on that day, the Abarbanel issued a very interesting halachic ruling that as the Jews would be expelled from Spain, they would do so amidst music. Can you imagine playing music on Tisha B'Av? Because Abarbanel firstly wanted to raise the spirits of the broken Jews who were being expelled from Spain, and also he was trying to teach a lesson that we never cry when we leave the Gullus, we only cry when we leave Jerusalem. The Abarbanel was a prolific writer. He wrote a trilogy on the coming of Mashiach called Yeshua's Mashichai, Mayane HaYeshua, and Mashmi'e Yeshua. Actually, there's a very interesting chiddush of the Abarbanel. We know the Rambam has 13 principles of faith, Yud Gimel Ikram. The Rambam seems to have omitted a very important principle. Did you ever realize that the Rambam never lists creation ex nihilo, Brias ha'olam yesh me'ayin? The Rambam never lists this as one of the 13 principles of faith. It's a big question. Why doesn't the Rambam say one of the 13 principles of faith is God created the world yesh me'ayin? So the Abarbanel writes, by the way, the Abarbanel asks, the Rambam himself says, Yesoid ha-Torah kula shehashem himtzias ha'olam lo midavar. One of the main principle of the world, of the Torah, is that God created the world out of nothing. So why isn't it one of the 13 principles of faith? Says Abarbanel, it dawned on him, it occurred to him, that in fact, creation ex nihilo is one of the principles of faith. You know which principle? Says Abarbanel, the fourth principle. Ani mamin be'emunah shalema, shahaboyre yisbarach shemai, hu rishoin v'hu acharoin. If God was first, think about it. If God was first, and He preceded creation, then He's the creator. If the only thing that preceded creation was God, then implicit in that is Brias Ha'olam Yesh Me'ayin. By the way, they found the marginal notes of the Rambam on the Yud Gimel Ikrim. And the Rambam, in his own handwriting, clarifies that part of believing that God was first and last is the belief that Hashem created the world Yesh Me'ayin. By the way, the Abarbanel says an amazing idea. He says that all the years that he served as the minister in Spain and in Portugal, he had no time to learn. And then when he was wandering, without any position, without any possessions, and he didn't have to serve the kings and the queens, he had a lot of time to study. Says Abarbanel, now I understand the phrase of the Gemara. Chisurei mechsera v'hachi katani. We know there's a phrase in the Gemara that sometimes you have a question on the Mishnah, and the Gemara will answer, oh, the Mishnah is missing words, this is what it means to say. But says the Abarbanel, now I understand that as a play on words. Chisurei mechsera, when you're missing in life, when you don't have job, profession, resources, hachi katani, now you have time to learn. Be it as it may, the Abarbanel has an ingenious and original approach to understanding the departure of Yaakov Avinu from this world and what Yaakov Avinu was trying to accomplish in the Birchas Yaakov. Says the Abarbanel, and as we're going to see historically, this is such an appropriate approach to the Abarbanel himself. Says the Abarbanel, Yaakov Avinu is on his deathbed. He's surrounded by his 12 sons. Things have changed a lot since Avraham and Yitzchak. Avraham has one righteous son. Yitzchak has one righteous son. Yaakov Avinu has 12 children. Each child has a different personality, different geographic location, different inclination. Very soon these 12 children will be 70. And it will no longer be a family, it will be a nation. And in order for a nation to be consolidated and united and effective, we need a melech. We need a king. So Yaakov Avinu on his deathbed, he is appointing the next and the first king of Israel, the first king of Israel, and the king of Israel for all time. Because as we are about to be forged as a nation, we need a melech. Says Abarbanel, there is no such thing as Berchas Yaakov. These are not brachos. This is not rebuke. This is not prophecy. And this is not geographic and real estate advice. Yaakov Avinu is doing one thing in his dying words. Yaakov Avinu is going through his children one by one and determining whether they are in fact eligible to be the king of Israel now and for all time. And one major question the Abarbanel deals with is, what does it mean, Lo Yasur Sheva Yehuda? Kings will never depart from Judah? Really? Kings will always come from Yehuda? Who is the first king of Israel? Come on, in this city, this is a name you need to know. Shaul. Shaul is the first king of Israel. Is he from Yehuda? He's not from Yehuda. What about Yeravam ben Nevat? Is he from Israel? He's not from Israel. What about in the times of the Chashmonaim? The Kohanim became kings. What about in our generation? Who's the king of Israel today? We don't have one. So how do we understand Lo Yasur Sheva Yehuda? The scepter of rulership will never be removed from Yehuda. It didn't start with Yehuda and it didn't end with Yehuda. There are only a few kings from Yehuda. You had David, you had Shlomo. What does it mean, Lo Yasur Shem Yehuda? The Abarbanel has a wondrous perspective on this. Let's start with Reuven. You could look on your sheet at the Psukim. Yaakov Avinu says, Reuven b'choyriyata, Reuven, you're my firstborn. Koichi, you were born in my vigor. Voracious oini. Yeser se'es v'yeser oz. you should have advantage of power and strength. Malchus should be yours. You're the firstborn. But sorry, Ruvain, you don't have what it takes, because pachaz kamayim al toisar. You're impetuous. You jump to conclusions. You were the one who, after Rachel Imenu passed away, and I placed my mita, I placed my bed in the tent of Bilhah, you took it out of Bilhah's tent, you put it in your mother's tent. You acted impetuously. The midah of pachaz, pechizut, the midah of impetuosity, sometimes is called for, sometimes is appropriate, but it is not fitting for a melech. A melech has to be just. A melech has to be patient. A melech has to exhibit righteousness. Therefore, Ruvain, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm saying reality. You don't have the personality. You're not cut out to be the king of Israel. Let's move on to Shimon v'Levi. Shimon v'Levi achim, your brothers. Klei chamas mecheroi sehem. Your weapons are that of destruction. You're great guys. Nobody else could have done what you did. You stuck up for your sister Dinah. You wiped out the whole city. There's no such thing as innocent civilians. If they don't protest, they endorse, the Maharal says. Anyone who doesn't protest wrongdoing, anyone who votes in terrorists is a terrorist. There are no innocent civilians. That's the law of civil law according to halacha. So you did the right thing. The only thing is, this is not characteristic of a king. A king acts with justice, with righteousness. It may be needed. The anger that you have, the zealotry that you have, is appropriate when called for. And therefore Rashi explains that Yaakov Avinu appoints Shimon and Levi the teachers in the yeshivas. Because to be a Rebbe in a yeshiva and to transmit the Messiah to the next generation, you have to have some zealotry, you have to have energy, you have to have passion. That's wonderful as a Rebbe, that's wonderful as a teacher, but not as a melech, not as a king. Let's come back to Yehuda in a bit. Zevulun lives on the coast. So what? Zevulun were businessmen. They were merchants. Business is great. Parnasa is wonderful. But business is not for the king. Imagine if somebody came into the king's court, was seeking audience with the king, and the king said, hey, you want to buy a watch? You know? The role of the king is not to be involved in commerce and business. It's not becoming of the melech to be involved in S'chaira. And therefore, Zevulun, I'm not criticizing you. I'm not chastising you. And I'm not blessing you. I'm just clarifying why you are not fit to be the Melech Yisrael. Yisachar, Chamor Gorem, you're a bony donkey. Yisachar worked in the fields. Yisachar was a laborer. Labor is wonderful. Gedoyla Malacha. But it's not becoming for the Melech to be involved in labor of the land. Therefore, Yisachar was disqualified. The pasuk says, "Vayehi lamas oived." Yisachar is a loyal citizen. He pays the taxes to the king, but he gives the taxes to the king. He's not fit to be the king. What about Dan? In the times of Shimshon Hagibar, Shevet Dan were fighters in ambush. They would wait, lurking in the bushes, to pounce on their enemy from behind. It's a type of warfare. It's a type of strategy. It could be very effective. But this is not becoming of a melech. The tactic, the strategy of the melech is not underhanded, devious warfare. The melech comes with full force, in pomp, in ceremony, in full glory. The method and methodology of a melech in the way he conducts war is beroimimos, begedula, with greatness, with majesty, and therefore Shevet Dan did not have the quality needed to be the melech, and that's why Yaakov Avinu says, Lishu ascha kivisi Hashem. We ask, what's that doing in the Berachas Yaakov? Well, it's not Kriya Shema al Amita. What Yaakov Avinu is saying is, when the Melech represents the Jewish people, it has to be with grandeur and majesty, but not underhanded, not in ambush. This is not the type of salvation that represents the warfare of Hashem. And one by one, Yaakov Avinu goes through all the Shvatim. Asher are bakers. It's very good to be a baker. We need bakers. But what's the role of the baker? Me asher shmeina lachmoi v'hu yitein madane melech. Asher provides baked goods for the king. He's baking for the king. He makes danishes and cookies for the king. But he's not a king. What about Binyamin? Binyamin in history was taking spoils of the warfare. That's not becoming of a melech. That's not becoming of the king. It's a little bit too sly, a little bit too devious. This doesn't reflect the nobility of a king. Naphtali is a swift messenger. He is equipped. He is cut out to be an assistant of the king. But again, he doesn't have the qualities to be Malchus. And what about Yosef? After all, Yosef had dreams of grandeur. The brother said to Yosef, Hamaloich timloich aleinu. Yosef had the prestige. Yosef had the personality. Yosef had the characteristics. What was wrong with Yosef? Why was Yosef disqualified from being the melech? Says Abarbanel, Yaakov Avinu is very complimentary of Yosef. Bein Paras Yosef, Bein Paras Alei Oyen. Yosef had the charm. Yosef had the personality. Yosef had the personality. There was only one difference between Yosef and Yehuda. And that is, there's a difference between a melech and a moshel. There's a difference between a king and a dictator. A dictator rules against the will of the people. Whether the people like him or not, whether they're jealous of him or not, the dictator, the authoritarian, takes dominion for himself without the acquiescence of the people. But Yosef's power elicited the jealousy of his brothers. Vayimararuhu varoibu. They embittered his life. They fought with him. The brothers were jealous of Yosef's grandeur, which means that even though Yosef had the personality and the characteristic and the charm, nevertheless it aroused the jealousy of the brothers. The brothers were not accepting of Yosef's rulership. And therefore Yaakov Avinu says, as much as I love you, Yosef, and you are my favorite son, and I gave you the Ksainas Pasim, but because you did not have the acceptance of your brothers, you are not fit to be the king of Israel. But let's come to Yehuda. Yaakov Avinu says to Yehuda, Yehuda, Ata yoiducha achecha. You, your brothers, acknowledge you. Your brothers accept you. Your brothers acquiesce to your greatness. Ata yoiducha achecha. So you have the consensus of the people. Yadcha ba'oref oyevecha. You have the military prowess needed to be the king. Gur Aryeh Yehuda. You're not like Dan. You're not like Shimon Belevi. You don't act with treachery. You don't act with violence. You act with calm, with nobility, with patience. And also indicating Gur Aryeh Yehuda, you have the stability and the endurance needed to be a king. Says the Abarbanel amazingly, and this is the only Mefaresh al HaTorah. has been able to create one thematic approach to what Yaakov Avinu was doing in his dying words. He's not blessing, he's not castigating, he's not chastising, he's not prophesying, he's not giving them advice. He's merely establishing who will rule over the Jewish people. So you'll ask, but was it true that what Yaakov said, Lo Yasur Sheva Yehuda, wasn't Shaul the first king of Israel? Wasn't Yeravam ben Avada king? We don't have kings today. Says Abarbanel, don't make a mistake. Yaakov Avinu didn't say Lo Yasur Melech Yehuda. He said Lo Yasur Shevet Yehuda. What does Shevet mean? Shevet means Torah leadership. Torah leadership will never depart from Shevet Yehuda. Says Abarbanel, throughout Jewish history, the Gedolei Yisrael, the leaders of the Jewish people, the Rabbanim, have always been predominantly from Shevet Yehuda. Says Abarbanel, let's start from the very beginning of time. When the brothers were about to kill Yosef, who spoke out and said, Ma betza? What are we doing this for? Who spoke up and said, that's it? Yaakov, send Binyamin down, otherwise we're all going to die. Not Ruvain, not Binyamin. Vayomer Yehuda shilcha hanar. And when Yosef was going to keep them all hostage, who stood up and risked their life? Vayigash elahav Yehuda. Which degel traveled first? Yehuda. Who brought the first carbon inaugurating the Mishkan and the Mizbeach? Nachshon ben Aminadav. Who got land first in Eretz Yisrael? Yehuda. When the Jewish people are counted in Nevi'im and Ksuvim, they're counted and Yehuda's always counted separately. Even after the Golus, the Reish Galusa, the Rosh Sanhedrin were always from David HaMelech. Comes the Abarbanel, and the Abarbanel says, V'chein haya hadavar gam hayom. In France, in Spain, all the Gedolei Yisrael always come from Shevet Yehuda. Did you know that 80% of Ashkenazic Jews, at least, come not only from Yehuda, but from David HaMelech? The Rambam was a direct descendant of David HaMelech. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was a direct descendant of David HaMelech. And the Abarbanel himself, in all of his Svarim, he says, I am Geza mi Beis Yishai. The Abarbanel himself traced his lineage directly from David HaMelech. Menashe ben Israel was a direct descendant of the Abarbanel and David HaMelech. Rashi, the Rambam, as we mentioned, they're all from David HaMelech. La Yasur Sheva Yehuda does not mean kings will always come from Yehuda. What it means is Torah leadership will always come from Shevet Yehuda. This is the Abarbanel's approach, not to the Birchas Yaakov, but to the dying words of Yaakov Avinu. And if you might want to understand, why now? Why is Yaakov Avinu, so to speak, designating that Torah leadership will always be from Shevet Yehuda? Why now? Why specifically now? You know, there's a very interesting teaching of Shlach HaKadosh. Shlach HaKadosh defines for us, Yosef has a role and Yehuda has a role. The role of Yosef in Jewish history, from the beginning of time, is Yosef is the midah of Yesod, the foundation. Yosef always is the foundation of the Jewish people. Did you know? Anybody know when Avram Avinu came to the land of Israel, what's the first city he visited? Vayavar Avram ba'aretz ad mekayim Shechem. Why Shechem? City of Yosef. Foundation. Set the foundation. Yaakov Avinu comes back to Israel. First city he goes, Shechem. Why is the city of Shechem, of all the cities in Eretz Yisrael, the one that is least in our hands, least in our control, the most destroyed of any city in the land of Israel today? It's because don't get your hopes up so high and think, we have Yerushalayim and we have Mekayim HaKadoshim, so we're almost there. We're almost there. We don't even have the foundation. That's how much the Jewish people are still b'chorban. Shechem, Yosef, is the foundation of Israel. The job of Yosef in history is to fuse individual Jews into a people. You see, Yaakov Avinu had 12 sons. They developed into 70. The job of Yosef is to lay the foundation, and he forges us into an Am. Once we're a nation, we can have a Melech. That's why first comes Mashiach ben Yosef. He makes us into a people. Then comes Mashiach ben David. He's our Melech. First we have Mishkan Shiloi. That's the foundation and the Chelek of Yosef. Then we have the Beis Hamikdash and the Chelek of Yehuda. Yosef always precedes Yehuda. Yosef comes down to Mitzrayim, and then they send Yehuda down to Mitzrayim. Yaakov Avinu, in his dying words, he's passing on the baton. Yosef, you did your job. We're all down here, all 70 souls. You've made us into a people. B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beis Yaakov me'am lo yez. Now we're an Am. Now it's time for Haisa Yehuda L'Katshai. Now Yehuda has to take over and establish Malchus in Klal Yisrael. And in the eyes of the Abarbanel, Malchus refers to Torah leadership. Our Chachamim, our Gedolim, our Torah leaders, they don't have to be sitting on a throne. Malchus Yisrael are the Torah leaders of the Jewish people. Our Gedolei Yisrael, says Abarbanel, from the beginning of time until this very day, they are from Shevet Yehuda. He says, even in the times of the Chashmonaim, the leaders of the Jewish people were always from Shevet Yehuda. So we should be zoicha to see the ultimate fruition of the Nevuah of La Yasser Shem Yehuda with the coming of Mashiach ben David, B'mher v'yaminu, Amen.
Thank you so much for incredible, inspiring words. And you conclude with the theme, your Haisa Yehuda L'Katshai. I just want to add a little comment to that. Friday night in Shul where I spoke, Shabbat afternoon, the topic was Tefillah. I myself looked through a little Ramban, a long Ramban actually. I happened to talk about Tefillah. Yesterday we have talked about Tefillah also. Chizuk in Tefillah. And this morning, when we sat over breakfast, he also gave me incredible chizuk for Tefillah. And that comes together with that whole concept of the Haisa Yehuda L'Katshai. Now, Hashgacha brought you together over here with somebody else. And you and that other person teach us the same lesson. That is you, and that is Mr. Raul Lodstein, who sits much too much in the back of the shul. So, while you were talking, I had a little machshava, because you told me something this morning, something incredible. You left a big shul, is obviously a big shack as well, for one reason, because you said, if I want to be a Rav of a shul, or if I'm the Rav of a shul, I can only be the Rav of a shul where they don't schmooze, where they don't talk. And when that wasn't possible, you just said, okay guys, I'm leaving you. As we all know, Raul Lodstein has incredible zechus in this town to inspire us. It was the same thing, that when we come to shul, we don't talk. We come in shul to talk to Hashem and not to talk to each other, only before, after the davening. But I want to add one thought, which I thought about just a few minutes ago. Because the gematria of your name is Daniel, which is 95. The gematria of Yisrael, Raul's name, is Yisrael, that's 541. The difference between those things is 446, which is HaEmes. So, and if you want to go for the emes, if you want to go for the truth, if you want that all those words of the message of Yehuda, the message of Yaakov, that becomes truth, we have to take your lesson and Yisrael Lodstein's lesson together. I really feel sincerely, if we work on our non-schmoozing, doing davening, and to put like that in a mosque, you won't hear one thing. Put like that in a church, you won't hear one word. If you work on that, on our silence doing davening, and only talking to the Rebbeinu Shalom, then the atmosphere in our shuls will change. We will change. And Hashem will change as well, and bring those words of your Haisa Yehuda L'Katshai to its fullest strength of those words. Thank you so much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.